welcome to Talks with Teads. My name is Katie. I'm the EVP of Global Marketing at Teads, and I'm here today with Brian from Dentsu. So Brian, really excited. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Katie. Thanks for having me. Brian Monahan. I lead the global retail media practice at Dentsu. So we see retail media as frankly as a transformation business consulting opportunity for us as a service business that drags a lot of media activation and creative and MarTech consulting. And we're privileged to work with brands and retailers around the world in this exciting new realm of retail media.
It's a very exciting new realm for sure. And there's so many different things that can influence and impact this space. Most of all, I think the great uncertainty in the economic climate and also just impacting consumers. So when you think about the future of retail and shopping, like what are you keeping in mind for the retail media sector?
Yeah, I mean, well, certainly with economic uncertainty, retailers are very attuned to what the pricing is going to be of the merchandise that they can sell on shelves. But frankly, Katie, like this is going to make the retail media side of retailers' businesses even more important than it has been, because that injection of high margin ad revenue can offset some of the price pressure they feel and how they price their merchandise on the shelf.
Right.
And I'd also say that from a demand perspective, the beauty of retail media for most endemic advertisers is you can see the impact of the ad spend on sales. So when times get tight and budgets get tight, they tend to gravitate towards channels that can be held accountable.
Right. And I know that you have a lot of interesting experience speaking very deeply with both brands or advertisers and retailers. So what do you think some of the opportunities are to kind of bring those two halves of the whole closer together to add more value?
Yeah. I mean, retail media is, I think a lot of times people say, oh, it's like the next search or the next social. And we don't see it that way. I mean, it's fundamentally a reset of how brands and retailers work together. It's changing retailers' business model. You know, when you're hearing stats like Walmart, my ex-employer, reporting our estimates being that 30% of their profits are coming from their ad business, they're not a retailer anymore.
Right.
It's some other type of business. And that's a big change. We've never seen it like that. Retail media is also, it's a destination, but it's also a layer, right? So you have retailers who are selling ads on their own properties and then working with partners like Teads, right? To like reach their customers and audiences across the internet, right? So it's a destination and a layer, which adds all this interesting newness to it. But ultimately, it's the only media transaction where the objective of the buyer and the seller is the same. Okay, so both, at least for endemic advertisers of retail media, they both are chasing the same customer to get her to buy the same thing. And the incentives are aligned to do really great things, far beyond what we're doing today with like sponsored search and sponsored product ads. Like we should be doing so much more. So where we see ourselves as a service business, right, as an advisor, as an agent for our clients, retailers and brands, is to help them really figure out how they can work together to go beyond some of the noise of how difficult it is to transact in retail media today. And focus on the big picture, which is how do we grow market share together? And like, what is it that the customer and shopper she needs to see to make a better decision for her household? And how do we program that customer journey? So we are really psyched to be working with both parties in this brave new world.
And I think there's something really interesting in what you said about the consumer journey, because I think that retailers, as you said, they're not just retailers anymore. They're almost becoming destinations to discover, learn about, purchase. So how does that influence how you think about branding strategies and building brand awareness, but then pushing audiences down the path to ultimate purchase and sale?
Yeah, great question. And frankly, it's one that our clients are wrestling with, so how do you program this full path to purchase? And we live in this interesting era where people no longer go shopping, they're always shopping, right? So we've trained consumers, if you can think it, you can buy it. You're on the couch, you're on the subway, you're doing like, so there's a collapse of the purchase process there. So it's like commerce doesn't just happen in store, and then media surfaces are getting dragged into store. So it creates this really interesting palette upon which to try to build brand preference and drive demand. What's interesting where a lot of our energy is being spent we have these legacy organizational models, right? So for brands, they typically will have a brand marketing team with a budget, that's like a business expense. And then they'll have a trade or a sales or a customer team that has like a budget that's kind of a cost of goods sold. So there's like an accrual for every case they sell.
Right.
And so you have these like two buckets of money, and you have these like two teams that are associated with, one's building national brand preference, the other one's like trying to capture share at a retailer. But the customer doesn't behave that way, right? She shops like across, and we have this new palette. And so like, how do you get these organizations and all the ecosystem and agencies and creative briefs and blah, 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 blah. Like, how do you bring all that together to actually do something that's really going to drive and work with a customer? So much of what we're doing today has less to do about like the craft of elegant marketing, and it's more about like reorg and process engineering.
And that makes a lot of sense in the current landscape, especially as you said, as a consumer, if you can think it, you can buy it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's rapid change in the industry, even as how we as consumers discover, learn, find new information. So when you think about the role of AI in product discovery and how consumers act and shop and operate, what are some of the things you're most excited about in terms of just watching where the space can go?
The collapse of the purchase funnel and just the rise of addressability, like a lot of things that Teads has helped drive, by the way, like that just creates this like level of complexity, right? Both from a segmentation sort of perspective of who are these different audience segments at this moment in time? What do they, all the way down to the individual level. And then, so how do you make decisions about who to speak to when? How do you make decisions about what piece of creative to assemble and present to that one instance? And it's too expensive to like do it by hand, and it doesn't work as well. So what we're doing at Dentsu is a lot of point solutions, right? A lot of like tooling around, like we've built something called Brief Genie, which I think is hilarious because clients give us creative briefs and then anything but briefs. So then we load it into Brief Genie and we summarize it. We'll have like tools that help us write like copy for like search ads, or tools that will suggest segments, or we'll create like a synthetic version of the consumer audience so we can talk to her as if she were there doing old fashioned focus. So we've got like all these interesting tools throughout it. I think where it's going to wind up more like sort of the singularity is when it's making better decisions in real time about who to target, where to target, and what to show her.
Absolutely. And that goes back to your original point of like both sides really being focused on the same goal for the first time in our industry, which is really exciting.
Yeah.
Any other points that you're very excited about in the retail space, or things that you think we as an industry should be watching?
I think that the retail landscape is that, there's going to be some sort of shakeout, right? There's, we've seen this explosion in retail media networks in the US because you have to. Like if you're a retailer, it is existential to have that injection of profit in your business, or you won't be able to price your goods competitively. You have to get into retail media. And it's happening around the world too. So this is not a U.S. phenomenon. U.S. is ahead because we have a really consolidated retail landscape and relatively permissive data laws. It's happening here faster, but it's happening around the world. And so, it's this really noisy marketplace right now. And I see it on our brand side where they're just like, oh my God, like I've literally been in meetings where the clients will sort the spreadsheet of retail media networks and draw a line and say, we can deal with those, 5 or 6, and the rest of them, you need an easy button. So I think there will be some sort of consolidation, networkization, managed like something's going to have to change to like just make it easier. I think we're going to have to get way better on just like standards and measurement methods. So we're like ingesting this data consistently. So I think it's a really exciting space because it's really sort of this gangly teenager of an industry that's like coming to grips with its strength.
Yeah.
And so we got to have some shakeout. We're going to have some standards, and it's just going to allow marketers to really achieve competitive advantage to like get in the market and really move the needle.
So many exciting things that we could talk for hours about, but I just really want to thank you, Brian, for taking the time to talk about all of these interesting things and for joining us for Talks with Teads.
All right. Yeah. Great spot. Fun to do it.